This tank is a Tiger II. This is a German Tier 8 heavy tank. The map is El Haluf. I am going to get 2,200 damage. I'm going to show you a sniping position. I'm going to play the game. This is typical of the way I would play if I'm going to do a lot of sniping and if I have a slow tank that I'm playing in midfield. If you watch my videos, you know that I love to play in the center of the map. It allows you to spot in all directions, to shoot in all the directions. It's also very dangerous. You can get incoming fire from all directions. So if you get spotted, the first thing you want to do is head for the opposite, for the slope, so that you're opposite on the slope of the enemy tank, so they obviously can't shoot at you. Most people with heavy tanks would want to go to the A1 position in the northwest. However, I am a Tier 8 tank, and because I'm a Tier 8 tank, my gun is not going to be very effective against the Tier 9 and Tier 10 tanks that are going to be fighting in that position. So I decided to play over here. Basically what you do is, if nobody is here, you take a command and control dominant position. If the enemy is here, which they are, you wait until the enemy is dead before you advance on. So we have a T-49, you know, it's common, it happens frequently, and we have the FV-4202. So the plan is going to be to control this position, to help my team kill these tanks, and once those tanks have been killed, we're going to move on to their base and try and flank the enemy. From this position, you can snipe at the enemy through this gap over here in the distance. You'll see that there's a gap. And if we get any chances at sniping at enemy tanks in that gap, we're going to take advantage of it. At some point, someone is going to have to go deal with the tank that's capping. You'll notice that a T-54 Mod 1 did cross through the gap, so he's a potential target. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tanks backing me up. The enemy has at least 3 tanks that we know of already. So you can shoot through this gap off in the distance from many different positions. You don't have to do it just from here. I could do it from here, and I can do it from the rock formations on the other side of the hill that I'm on. One of the things you do want to do is you do want to knock down as many trees as you can to give yourself additional cover. You also want to, you don't want to go to the edge of the hill. You want a lot of distance in front of you. The closer you get to that edge, the more danger you're going to be in, the more likely you're going to be spotted by light tanks that are at the encounter base, and the more likely that the enemy off in the distance is going to spot you. So stay away from that area when you're sniping up onto this into this area. So now we can see that the T-49 has finally been spotted along with another tank. We're going to help our team take him out. You can see there's a first tank that's gone into the gap over there. So that T-54 Mod 1, he wants to shoot at my allies that are on the base, but what he doesn't know is I'm going to be defending my allies. So every time he tries to come out there, I'm going to be taking shots back at him. And now we got a second tank that showed up. So I got 316 damage on the Centurion Action X. You can see the T-34. We got a third enemy tank that's at the base now. If you look at the enemy side, the eastern part of the map, there's no spotted enemy tanks. So they're either gone or they haven't been spotted yet, but they're less defended on that side of the map now. Our T-34 has crossed over. The Skoda T-50 has crossed over. The Grill 15 has also crossed over. They're going to get some good positions. I'm going to help with some cover fire. If anybody tries to take any shots at them, I'm going to be shooting back. Score is 4-3. I've got 950 damage and 1,000 spotting damage. You can see that my team is starting to take up good positions. I just as well could have gone to where that T-34 and the Grill 15 is. I chose to remain in this spot. They're going to have shots on the base that I'm not going to be able to to take shots at. You can see that the Skoda, if you look at the mini-map, you can see our Skoda T50 is taking up the sniping position on the enemy side. One of the things that I should have done is I should have alerted the T-54 as to which targets I was aiming for, so he knows to focus on which tanks are more of a threat to him, and to allow us to focus on the tanks that are in the corner, so that he doesn't have to expose himself to any unnecessary danger. I've switched to APCR rounds. I ran out of the AP rounds. That's one kill. We're starting to somewhat encircle the enemy. Scores 11-6. One thing about playing this position, I've sat here for many minutes not being able to shoot at anything, so it's not a golden position, but be aware of what you can do and what can happen. If you are capping the base, they will come to that position right there where that T-54 is to try and reset the base, so you will have targets in that gap. People are obviously more aware of the game now, so they tend not to sit in that middle area. A year ago, I would have had a lot more shots through that gap right there. That was an example where the T-54 had to drive through, and I took a shot at him. And as I was saying, a year ago, it would have happened more frequently. Tanks would just be sitting there unaware of what was going on. The players are a little bit smarter now. Okay, so now it's just a cleanup operation. I got 2,200 damage, which is really good for a Tier 8 tank in a Tier 9 and Tier 10 game with a 3-5-7 matchmaking. Got 1,000 spotting damage, which was me spotting at the beginning of the game. Obviously, we won on our side of the map very quickly. I probably won't have any more action in this game. I'm going to speed it up a little. And that's the game. This tank is a Tiger II. This is a German Tier 8 heavy tank. And the map is Abbey or Monastery. I am going to get 2,500 spotting damage in this game. This is a 3-5-7 matchmaking game. I'm a Tier 8 in a Tier 9 game. When I play on this map, I almost always come to the east side. The exception would be maybe if I had an autoloader, I would prefer to play on the west side. On the west side, with an autoloader, you can hit the enemy and retreat and reload. If you have a tank with a long reload, playing on the west side might give you a little bit of an advantage. There's a few different ways to spot. I usually head for that center island, and there's 2 or 3 different ways to spot on the center island. However, the players are starting to become more aware of the center island tactic, so you got to be a lot more defensive now than you could have been perhaps a year ago. Now, when you're on that center island, you got to make sure that you got to make sure to cover crossfire. You can see I've already gotten 1,750 damage. Now, from this point, if you head forward into those bushes, the enemy can come through the gaps over here and fire at you. So it's better to go to the right and climb up the hill into those bushes. However, it's very dangerous to do so. You could easily fall off. Now, again, the way I'm going right now is far more dangerous, and I don't use this method anymore. I usually take the right, go higher up onto the hill. Over here, you're going to get hit by a lot more artillery, and you got to watch out for anyone that goes into that little gap. And I've been hit from the Abbey and the Monastery before. Over here, you can elevate yourself by climbing up onto this little hill. But obviously, oh, we got some more tanks. We got some more tanks. So once I've done my job spotting, I'm going to hide for 10 seconds. That was 385 spotting damage. I'm not going to worry so much about the artillery. Because my allies have moved up, I'm no longer doing any spotting for my team, so I have to reposition. I'm up to 2,500 spotting damage, which is approximately how much I'm going to get for the game. Now, at this point, you notice that I have, there's six on my team playing on the east side. Normally, I would not advance with my allies. Normally, what I would do is I would head over here, climb up this ridge, go down the other side, and come across on the other flank. But perhaps because I'm low on hit points might be part of the reason why I decided to go this way. The other thing that I do is I look at the enemy tanks and I look at how many hit points they have, what tiers they are, what tier my team is, and I try to determine if it's better for me to come this way in case my allies need support because of the tier that I am, the amount of damage I do, etc. Score is 5-1. I got 300 damage. Score is 6-1. And we cleaned up on this side. There's going to be an Su-152 nearby. We don't know where he is at this point. So obviously you can see where the enemy Su-152 is. He's right over there. That's a common place. When you come around this corner after clearing up, a lot of tanks are going to be parking where that Su-152 is, or perhaps where the AMX is. So be aware that that's where they like to hide. I'm going to cross over and see if I can put pressure on that Su-152. You can see we spotted a new tank. Score is 10-1. 11-1. My allies have one on the west side. Just a mopping up operation. Now, normally, you don't win on each flank at the same time. So if you win on one flank, which we did first, it's very important to go and put pressure on the enemy as quickly as possible to relieve some of the pressure on the enemy flank. And that's the game. This tank is a Tiger II. This is a German Tier 8 heavy tank, and the map is Live Oaks. I am going to show you a sniping position that you can use when you play on this map. And this sniping position is going to be playable with a slower tank such as the Tiger II. It's only doing 32 kilometers. The reason why it's important is because you want to get to the sniping position as quickly as possible. Otherwise, you're going to miss some of your targets. We're going to be able to hit the slower targets, such as the enemy Type 5 Heavy, who's going to pass by on that route. As for this tank, I'm not that crazy about this tank. I really don't enjoy playing it. I prefer the heavy tanks from the other nations. But I do play every tech tree, and I have every tech tree mostly on Tier 9 or Tier 10. This is obviously a Tier 8 because I don't like playing it that much. There's a couple different positions you can play, so this just happens to be one of them. I often go to... I don't know if I go to that next building or not. You could play behind here. You could go to the building one street over, which allows you to shoot down the street. You can go to... Over here behind me, you see that there's a tree in the center of the screen. There's a little shed and there's a little bush. That bush is a sniping position that you can use that allows you to hit the tanks that are entering town, right at the point that they enter town, as they go through the first row of houses. Okay, so here comes the Type 5 Heavy. Might not be able to penetrate it, but we'll see what happens. I reloaded by mistake. Did 289 damage. I hit his roof, which should be weak armor, but I ricocheted. So I did 854 damage against that Type 5 Heavy so far. And I know he doesn't have good gun depression. So he has to expose himself. He did hit me with an HE round. He is 2 tiers higher than me, which means he will do a lot of damage. And I know he has a long reload. In general, almost every tank that has a high damage usually has a long reload. Missed again. $308 damage. By the time he makes it into town, he's going to be at a fraction of his hit points. He really is playing the wrong strategy. And he took the wrong position when he went into that lower area because it's affecting his gun depression. What he should be doing is reversing to use gun elevation instead of using the gun depression. He would have been able to hit me. I'm just going to sit here, spot him when I need to spot him. He took another 500 damage right there. Spotting him from the other side of the building. He's not going to have his gun. Oh, he did have his gun pointed that way. Okay, so like I said, he's only down to 900 hit points. He lost 2,000 hit points because of the fact that I was in that position harassing him. I did 1,466 damage, and I did 526 spotting damage. And if I am correct, the 1,466 damage that I did was all against the Type 5 Heavy. This tank is a Tiger II. This is a German Tier 8 heavy tank, and the map is Emperor's Border. I'm going to show you a sniping position that you can use when you play on this map. Now, I haven't been playing for a long time. I just started playing again last week, so I haven't had as many games on this map as other players have. So I'm still new at finding sniping positions. One of the philosophies I have is to always play in the middle of the map, and it works on many maps. And the reason why is because when you're in the middle of the map, you can shoot at tanks in all different directions, and you can spot tanks in all different directions. If you're spotting at the edge of the map, then a lot of your spotting circle is off the map, so you don't get full use of it. So as you can see, you got pretty good coverage over here. There's going to be a lot of tanks that are not going to roll out in the middle. However, there's a lot of good things about this position. For one thing, if you've got a good spotter, you can hit tanks that are pretty far away, like that tank is an example. Now here, he's a Tier 9 tank, and I usually don't use the APCR rounds. I usually use regular rounds, so it's going to be difficult for me to penetrate that tank. The other thing that's good about playing in this position is that you can advance and cover the north, which we might see in another video or later in this game. can see that someone was taking a blind shot in my direction. I don't know if you can hear it, but I can hear all sorts of chickens and roosters and other animals. So one of the ideas that I had was I knew that that tank was behind this building, so why not shoot the building down? It's better to shoot the building down than to run down there and chase after the guy. You know, just knock the building down. Use your less expensive rounds when you knock the building down, but definitely do so instead of driving out there. Okay, so you notice that my team is advancing in the north. And what's going to happen is where that SPG is, if I reposition, I'd be able to hit him. So at some point, I'm going to have to reposition. And the other thing is, there is a Tiger 2 who is hiding somewhere that I could reposition and go after, even though he just showed up. So now we got to worry about this T110E5. He's going to be a well-armored tank. It's going to be difficult for me to penetrate. Okay, so this is probably getting beyond the scope of the sniping position, so let's move on to another video. This tank is a Tiger 2. This is a German Tier 8 heavy tank, and the map is Live Oaks. We're going to look at a sniping position. We might see a few of them along the way. In terms of this tank, it's actually a pretty good tank. I enjoy playing it. I did not like playing any of the other Tiger tanks, such as the Tiger P. So this one is a lot better. When I played the Tiger P and the other Tiger tanks, I thought I was going to have an incredible game. I thought I was going to have this amazing armor. Because when I was a lower tier player, I could never penetrate those tanks, but I did not have great games in those tanks, and I did not enjoy playing them. But this one I do like, and I absolutely like the tanks that follow it. I prefer to play super heavy tanks as opposed to the regular heavy tanks. I'm not the brawler style player. So we're going to take a look over here at these houses. And you're going to notice that there's gaps between the houses, some of which you can shoot through. I've passed most of the rows of houses. This one is not an easy one to shoot through the gaps. We come to the next one, and again, the gaps are not that big. We have a very small gap over here. However, if someone else is spotting for you, or if you have really, really rapid reflexes, or maybe if you have a derp gun where you're only going to fire one shot and you're going to pre-aim, this might be a good spotting position. Why don't you take a look at where I am on the mini-map and where this house is and where I'm situated if you fit into that situation. If you want to hit the tanks multiple times, you do have to take up a different position. So obviously that tank did spot me, and I missed my shot. Very safe position. You're safe from artillery, you're safe from snipers, and most of the tanks are not going to shoot back at you, they're just going to keep on going. So unfortunately that tortoise became unspotted, and he's outside of my spotting range, so it's unlikely I'll be able to snipe at him. So I missed my opportunity to snipe, to hit any tanks during this game, but I did get spotting damage on the Type 4 Heavy. Now, the spotting position that I like to use is actually right here. You can look at the mini-map where I am, take a good look at this position. And you can see it's a pretty good position. You can hit all those tanks as they're going by, and any of the tanks that choose to remain, such as the Tortoise. There's a lot of tanks that like to play hull down in that position. You're going to find a lot of T-30s and a lot of T-34s that sit over there with the Tortoises. So another good thing about this sniping position is you can get some additional action on enemy tanks. But we're getting to be the point outside of the scope of sniping positions, so let's move on to the next video. This tank is the E50. This is a German Tier 9 medium tank, and the map is Prokhorovka. People talk about this tank. They like the fact that they use it for ramming, apparently. I'm not that crazy about this tank. I think it's underpowered. I use the fuel consumable because I don't like the performance. I'm not that crazy about the gun. I'm not that crazy about playing this tank in general. But I think this is going to be an interesting game. It's probably not going to be a high damage game or anything like that, but you're probably going to see a lot of different tactics used in this game. There is no artillery in this game, so I don't have to worry too much. Obviously, that guy did take a shot at me. But I occasionally try this position. You know, I don't do it every game. I lost 1,000 hit points because of that tank. So I try that position occasionally to see if it's effective for doing anything. Not really that useful. But it is a good crossover point. You can cross over the tracks at that location. I've done it many times. People don't expect you to do it, so if you need to do it very quickly, it is a possibility. You can see over here we can obviously snipe on the enemy. You would think that you can't hit under the trains, but I got 2 out of 4 under the train. Plus I got some spotting damage. Okay, so I brought him down on most of his hit points, even though one of my allies got the kill. That's a key position. From that position, you can shoot at tanks that are sniping on the rail. Now, obviously, I'm trying to knock the house down. I have a lot of rounds, so why not knock the house down so I don't have to drive and get closer to him? I'm a lot safer when I'm a distance away from him. He had 1 hit point, and I took him out of the game. So I used around 5 or 6 rounds in order to kill off that tank, and it was totally worth it. I still have 75 rounds left. You notice there's a lot of enemy tanks in the midfield area, so they probably don't have a lot of tanks up on the hill. When you're first starting out, you'll notice that my first 2 shots at that tank were right on the top sliver of his armor. It's definitely worth it, especially if you have a lot of rounds, to take risky shots, because you'll be surprised at how often you'll actually make those shots. The enemy is still concentrated in the middle of the map. My team is somewhat spread out. However, the enemy has taken up a front line, while my team has not. The other thing you're going to notice is that the enemy is concentrated in the middle of the map, but they're not spotted. If they're not spotted, it's not helping my team. So you want to keep those tanks spotted if you can. That basically means every 10 seconds just drive nearby from a safe position. They just became unspotted again. So from a safe position, you're going to drive nearby. This is obviously to try and spot some of these tanks. You do have to be careful because there may be one enemy tank up on the hill, which I believe was a T-34B, who could easily take me out of the game. So I don't want to engage the enemy head-on. I just want to try and keep them spotted, hope that my allies will take them out. My allies are now advancing on the hill. So if they're advancing on the hill, I have to be prepared to support them from below. They did spot a tank up on the hill, which is a T-34B. Yeah, it's too bad I didn't damage that guy. Because I have a lot of rounds. I'm actually switching to the APCR rounds. It's okay to take some blind shots if you have a pretty good idea where the enemy tank is. You don't know when he's going to be spotted again. So I ran out of my AP rounds. I usually use a third AP, a third APCR, and a third AG. And it's very rare that I use the APCR rounds. I switch to the HE rounds because it's a rounded turret. It's going to be difficult to damage with the APCR rounds. Now, when your gun gets damaged, it's going to hurt you. Basically, what it does is you cannot aim in as far. So it hurts you in the long range. At a close range, it's not going to bother you as much. Because it's the end of the game, I decided not to repair my gun and save myself a little bit of cash. And because, obviously, I'm not going to kill that last tank. So that's the game. I got 1,900 damage and 1,500 spotting damage. I got 1 kill